Yeah. Tell me to stop if I yabber on too much.
Never, never. Unless, of course, we're getting to the end of the session, which is what happened last time. So, awesome. Well, welcome this week to the very first in the section of Building Better Lives. And I think it's now the 9th week of the 13 free masterclass session. And this one's titled, Is This It? We're really talking about achievement auditing and achievement satisfaction. Because the vast majority of us, if not all of us, at some point get to a stage in our lives where we have climbed multiple mountains, but we feel dissatisfied. And when I was growing up, we always used to call this a midlife crisis. I'm not sure it counts as a midlife crisis anymore because we're going to live for so much longer. So I think we probably have third life, fourth life, fifth life crises. So who knows? But obviously it's something that many, many people struggle with. And I think it's something that if we are proactive in auditing our satisfaction levels, we can identify patterns, we can work out what actually genuinely satisfies us, as opposed to worrying about what others feel we should be satisfied by. And it means we can make more conscious decisions going forward. Hello, Grace. How are you? Nice to see you. I am just trying to move my slide. There we go. So as context, the very brutal truth, yes, this in fact is it. If we are lucky, we get 4,000 weeks on this world, on this earth, depending on your religious beliefs. But this is our shot, this is our time, and this is really ours to make the most of. So I'm a strong believer that following your passions is actually terrible advice. I think we all have to, and we've talked about this in Build Your Own Career, I think we all have to hone our skills. I think we have to take care of ourselves and our people, and purely following our passions often wouldn't lead to that. But I do believe very strongly that when we talk about passions, really what we're talking about is purpose. And our purpose is unique to all of us. And it's a very different combination for each of us of our core values, which are foundational and formed when we're very young, our strengths, which depending on what we've nurtured, what we haven't, and what comes to us naturally throughout the course of our lives will always differ, and then our passions. And by passions, I mean the kind of activities that we get into when we get into flow and suddenly 2 hours have gone and we don't know where that time has gone, or the things that really fire us up that we wake up and we're excited to do in the morning. I think that understanding ourselves means we can identify our purpose far better, but purely following our passions is not always the best way to go. So the audit exercise for this week, and I don't know if people have had a chance to look at it yet, is really about auditing our satisfaction levels. And that's sort of the first step in terms of building better lives, because it helps us start to identify what actually fires us up, as opposed to what society tells us or what our family or friends or whoever tells us we should be happy about, whether that's actually bringing us joy or not. So how the audit works, it should only take about 15 minutes. And we're very specific about the number of accomplishments that we advise sitting down and reviewing. So we suggest 5 in the last 1 to 2 years and taking a look at those accomplishments. So maybe that was a promotion, maybe that was a pay raise, maybe that was achieving a qualification outside of work, maybe it was a hobby, maybe it was something else in your personal life, but thinking really clearly about that accomplishment and doing this 5 times over with 5 different ones and thinking, what were you aiming for? So what did you think you were going to achieve? How did you think it would feel? Is it validation? Is it satisfaction? Is it joy? What it actually delivered in retrospect. So how did you feel after you'd done it? And then on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfied you were after you'd achieved that. And the reason we do this is because we can see that trajectory of very often we'll set ourselves a goal, we'll achieve it, and rather than really stop and celebrate that success once we've made it, we immediately set a goal that's further ahead and stretch. And this is called hedonic adaptation. So we get very used to what we've achieved, we take that for granted, and then we start aiming for something beyond. And it means we're never really satisfied and we never take real joy. And that might be because the thing we were aiming for was something that we thought we wanted because it would give us validation. And very often that will be something like a status symbol or a title or a role or a pay rise. Or it might be because we really don't know ourselves and we don't know what's genuinely going to bring us fulfillment. So once you've sat down and done that exercise with 5 different achievements, it's looking for the different patterns, which I'll talk about in a moment. But what's coming through and what are the unconscious drivers that are causing you to first choose those achievements or those goals in the first instance, and then how they're making you feel as a result and what that's doing following that. So how that's influencing your behavior after that. And then the final question really is, whose mountains are you climbing? Because we can do everything right on paper. And I see this a lot with one-to-one clients, very illustrious careers, great fat bank balances, but they're not happy because they've ticked every box that they thought they had to, but it hasn't really fulfilled what they want to do with their lives. So in that analysis piece, there are some very common patterns that tend to come up with clients. The first is status symbols. So I mentioned cars, titles, watches is a very popular one, particularly for the gentlemen. But it's really those things that tell the external world we've made it, we're worth it, we're someone to be looked up to. But realistically, while status is obviously very important in all human societies, it doesn't mean that it's going to fulfill us internally. So very often the people who have the most status symbols on the outside are the ones who are least secure in themselves on the inside. And that's part of their drive, is that insecurity is what's making them work so hard to prove to the outside world that they are worthy. The second one is very often pursuing others' definition of success. So what other people say success looks like. And we see this very often with career paths, and very often in the older days where we had more linear career paths. And then now we have much more squiggly careers. I'm stealing Duncan's term there. And very often that can be driven by people going, actually, I'm having my quarter life crisis or whatever you want to call it. This isn't fulfilling. I was doing what my parents thought I should do, is a very common thing if people are doctors, lawyers, that kind of thing. And actually, I want to go and do something else. So it's really taking the time to stop and think, am I pursuing this because it's my desire? Am I pursuing this because it's someone else's desire? And someone else's desire doesn't have to come from a negative place. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing, because the people around us want the best for us, but we still have to take accountability for the direction that we set for our own lives and our own goals. A third one can be undervaluing achievements. So I would wager that quite a few people, when I said 5 different accomplishments from the last 1 to 2 years, people will go, oh, I don't know if I've got 5. But actually, I bet you do. But we undervalue the achievements that we're doing. And we don't even stop to think the things that we have now, the things that we've achieved now, there is a version of us in the past that never thought we would be able to achieve those things. So we do have lots of achievements, but we never stop to really appreciate them. And that's a real challenge for our personal development, because when we stop to appreciate how far we've come, we build a degree of self-efficacy. And that's a neural pathway in our brain that tells us we are able to reach for new goals. We are able to push ourselves outside of our comfort zone, and we are able to back ourselves when we need to. So it's a really wasted opportunity, and a very common pattern to see that people just kind of take their achievements for granted and move immediately on to the next biggest thing. Another theme on this is around connection and meaning. So we often find that actually the pursuits that we follow that give us more connection and meaning end up meaning far more than the ones that have recognition and rewards. So it might be the side of desk work that we do at work, where we're building something for an ERG or working with other people to deliver a project. We might enjoy the connection and the meaning and the purpose around that more than, once a year getting a pat on the head, getting a nice rating and getting a bonus. It really depends. But very often we see that connection and meaning and that status of being a part of the group and providing value to that group can have far, far more meaning and satisfaction for us when we're doing this audit. And then the final one, and I know there's always the very cheesy saying about it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. But very often, if we're looking at patterns, we'll see that we actually enjoyed the process of getting to an achievement far more than we achieved that we enjoyed the final goal. And I'll always compare this to effectively like a running competition. That medal at the end feels very hollow and pointless. And unless you're doing, unless you're a collector, most people just leave them somewhere or give them to their kids or do whatever. The medal is not why you do the race. The training for the race, the being part of the race, the mental resilience you have to build up for the race. When you look back, that's the real achievement, not the medal that you get at the end of it. My very final slide, and then we're going to open this up for discussion. So just giving people a bit of warning that you'll be put on the spot shortly. Once we've identified those patterns, the last part of the exercise is really looking at how we build goals around this. So what have we noticed about where we get real satisfaction? And what does this mean for what we want to do with the next 90 days, 180 days, year of our lives? So I really recommend doing this on a quarterly basis and looking back and seeing whether you're evolving when it comes to the things that you're aiming for, how you're feeling, where your satisfaction levels are, and particularly using that 0 to 10 score, seeing where those satisfaction levels are. And then reviewing that, ideally with a personal board of directors. So a group of people that you trust, that you've surrounded yourself with, and that have your best intentions at heart, but really bouncing these ideas off people and then getting them to help hold you accountable, also getting them to give different perspectives as well on some of the things that you might be aiming to achieve in the future. And finally, as I said, continue doing this so that you can measure what matters, but specifically what matters to you. So As we get older, it becomes much, much less about the scorecard that everyone else is keeping. And it should be much, much more about the scorecard we are keeping with ourselves. So at the end of each week, have we achieved what we needed to do, or have we moved closer to our goal that matters most to us, as opposed to being driven by the priorities of other people, which is typically, particularly in corporate, very easy to get sucked into that trajectory. The final thing here, so we're talking about 4,000 weeks. I will send this link around to the group in the thing, but this is a really great little calculator. Doesn't sell you anything. You don't need to do anything, but you just put in your date of birth and hit click, and it will tell you how many weeks you've already lived and how many you have left on average. And I do this every single Sunday because it reminds me to stop wasting my time on things that other people might want me to do as opposed to mine. So it's a really good tool for just focusing our energy on what matters most to us. And that's it for me.